Welcome to Module 5. In this module, we'll be focusing on adding the database, doing our first migration, and overall start making our application more data-driven so that we store some metadata, or the metadata that we just added in the last episode. We're going to store that in the database so that we can update all of this information without necessarily having to do another deploy. So main focus here is getting comfortable with migrations, getting comfortable with potentially making mistakes when doing migrations, but also like what do we do if our migration goes wrong, right? So all of this we're going to be tackling now, so that once this module is done, you should be very familiar with adding migrations and also how to work with data in a Golang full stack web application. First of all, what is a database migration? Well, you can think of it as very similar to a version control system, but for the structure of our database, which comes in very handy as our applications evolve. Our data requirements and data structures will also evolve, so it can keep track of how our requirements have changed over time, and also make it easier to go back to a state for our data requirements and structures that fit our need or was working. You might make changes that destroy things, and then we want to be able to go back to that point in time where we didn't mess up. In practice, you will often see that migration involves two parts, which is the up version and the down version. And I've tried to create like a little diagram here with a database lifespan, where we start at version 0, and then we apply an up migration that takes us to version 1, and then later in the future, we apply another up version that takes us to version 2. If we, for any reason, made a mistake here with this up migration, we will apply this down migration, which will take us back to version 1. This is how you typically work with migrations in real life. You always try to plan for like an out if something goes wrong. It's not required that you have an up version and a down version, but it is really best practice. It's really nice to have if you make a mistake or you mess up. Having this option to go back in time is very beneficial. There are a few things you should try and keep in mind when working with migrations. Try and keep them immutable, which means that once you have applied them and they are deployed to production, you don't modify them. Of course, at the time you do apply them, you have the option to do the down version, fix the up version, then reapply it. But in general, you want to think of these as git commits. You don't really want to change the history. So you might need to just create a new migration that fixes your old migration. It might be easier for you than using the down version. So try to keep them immutable, and also always test your migrations, test the up version and the down version. Verify that the data is what you expect, both going forward and backward, and try to get into the habit of creating a backup plan. Now, this is essential if you're working with production data, especially in a large database. You want to have, let's say, a database dump that is as close as possible to the time of when you ran or when you're going to run the off version, especially if you're making changes that delete data, remove data. One of the things that I have learned that makes working with migrations a lot easier is to keep them small, keep them focused. So if you were to add, let's say, 2 new tables to the database, you would opt for having 2 migrations instead of only 1. This makes the conceptual change of the migration easier to reason about. It also makes it easier to roll back. And the second thing is to use meaningful names. So you name your migration based on what they do, and having them small and focused also makes this naming easier, and then you can better get an idea of what happens over the history of the changes made to the database. In the next episode, we will be putting all of this to practice, where we'll be creating our articles table that will store our metadata. We will run the up version and the down version. We will verify everything is as we expect it to be. And I think it's important to remember that if you have not done database migrations before, they might seem complex, especially when we are doing them at this level, you might have done them through ORMs or something similar. So you are down and dirty with the SQL here. And I think that's really beneficial because once you've done it a few times, you understand what they are much more conceptually, and they become just another tool that you have in your toolbox to work with your database. So don't worry if they're a little bit scary. You will definitely get the hang of it very, very fast.